Jim, if you could read this.
The time is now 5:15 p.m. I'm calling to order the St.Botolph Area Architectural Commission District Commission May 20th, 2026 public hearing. Commissioners present are myself, Jim Cutchin, Doug Miller, and Nancy Russell. Today, the commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, including the March 28th, 2025 amendment, extending the suspension of these provisions till June 30th, 2027, we're conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the St.Botolph Area Architectural Conservation District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. This hearing is being recorded. All further conversations between commissioners shall be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing is adjourned. Are there any media or elected officials currently present? If so, please state your name, title, and affiliation. Members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. We'll repeat these instructions throughout the hearing.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
So with tonight's agenda, first is going to be the ratification of the hearing minutes for the month of January in 2026. Then we're going to go on 2 items that are listed on design review. We have 1 item on administrative review. Then we'll be wrapping up with staff updates.
Great.
So first is the January 21st, 2026 meeting minutes. Jim, you typically just ask if everyone has had the chance to read the meeting minutes, then someone will motion, then we'll second and vote.
Has everyone had the chance to read the minutes of 1/21/26 meeting minutes?
Yes, I motion to approve.
Yes, seconded.
Great, thank you.
And then we'll take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. So then we have design review. First is a number of addresses, but they're all owned under the same management company. So that's going to be 7, 9 to 11 Blackwood Street and 144 and 150 St.Botolph Street. The proposed scope of work is to replace non-original aluminum doors with wooden doors replicating a historic panel configuration. So I see Marek is here. So Marek, I'm going to ask you, I've asked to unmute you, so you should be able to unmute. And then you can name your, if you could state your name and affiliation for the record.
Yes, my name is Marek Ryter. I'm the assistant of the property manager for 150 St.Botolph Street Association. And our plan is to replace the front door as soon as close as possible with the historical look. So we have right now the ugly aluminum system, which one you can see on the picture. And, our goal is replace this door with the nice looking historical wooden door, mahogany door.
Yep. So just these are the, if you can state which one this property is for the commissioners.
Yeah, the picture represents the 150 St.Botolph Street entrance.
Yep. And then this one is, if you could.
This is the 7 Blackwood, the next building, around the corner building. Everything is the same, like the same complex, the corner by corner.
Yep. And then these are the proposals right here. And then apologies, typically we do read out staff comments before the presentation, but I'm just going to read them as we're looking. So again, staff comments for this, for the commissioners to understand how we've been working with the applicant. So staff couldn't find any historic images of any of the properties that would provide guidance for creating an exact replica of the original wood doors. However, we worked closely together to propose an appropriate, or for the applicant to propose an appropriate design of a door that replicates a historic material and panel configuration found at properties within the district similar in design to these. That would be an appropriate replacement. As a result, staff recommends approval as submitted. Marek, is there anything else that you would like to add to the presentation?
Next to me is the woodworker, which one can create everything, from the scratch with the, proper the measurement, proper thickness, proper material, and the finish. So I'm very, convenient with them. So is there any, the question about the details, he more than happy, help us, give us the right answer about it.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Good. Is this, Jacqueline, is this okay now? This time?
Yeah, we can
Sure.
start asking
What's the
questions.
finish that you're going to be doing on these? Is it a clear varnish on a dark stain? Is it a
It's
paint?
marine varnish, spar varnish,
Right?
and that's what I've been using for exterior doors for 40 years, and
So
that's
it's gonna-
still the same.
So it's going to have like a light stain on it to match most of the other historical doors, dark
The
stain.
stain is, I have samples, so it's up to you and the management to choose what kind of stain. It's mahogany, brown, walnut. There are so many different kinds, but I have 4 samples here at this moment. And you stain it, it's going to be solid mahogany, all of them,
Yes.
everything. And stain and spar varnish on them. On the exterior doors, on the inner door, it's going to be pre-catalyzed lacquer because they are not exposed to the element.
That makes sense.
So
And
it's a
what is the-
mahogany color stain is what you're hoping to use?
The stain that I'm using, what you're asking, what are they?
Yeah,
Yeah, is it a stain in addition to a lacquer?
No, it's not
No.
lacquer. It is oil base.
Okay.
The stain itself is oil base.
Right. The lacquer just goes over it to protect it from the elements. It's marine grade.
Yes, for the
yeah.
inside doors, not on the outside doors.
Okay.
Right.
Outside doors get marine varnish.
And what
And
do
the-
those circles represent around the perimeter?
I'm sorry?
What do the circles represent in this image we're seeing? Oh, there we go. No, not that
These are
image. There we go.
these are the ideas I came up with. It could be so many different ways. Marek and I walked around the neighborhood. We just decided on few different ways, few different styles, and I came up with this. But as I say, it could be so many different styles.
No, I still understand, but what are the circles supposed to represent in this image? I'm not really clear. All around the perimeter.
Oh, these are the masonry. These are the masonry you see.
That's around the door, the masonry before.
Yes, masonry around the door, but
Yes.
it has nothing to do with the door itself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I follow you now. Yeah, all right. It was
Just
confused.
wanted to, yeah.
I believe, yeah.
So that one,
I think it was just trying to represent this right here.
yeah. These are the masonry.
Does anyone on the commission know how that would have been approved? It's so out of character with the neighborhood.
I can just try to maybe, we couldn't find any applications relating to these doors, so either it was just done way before the commission was created and sort of it was grandfathered in, and whenever they're doing maintenance, because it was grandfathered in, if it's an in-kind, then that's how it'll be, but
Mhm.
that's my best guess as to how this
Agreed.
was able to be replaced.
Thanks.
I'm sorry to go back to the color. I understand there's some marine grade varnish going on top, but what's the material of what type of wood is being used?
Mahogany.
And then, okay, so it's
Applicant
all,
mahogany.
and then is that going to be stained before the varnish?
The whole thing will be stained and varnished at the shop.
Okay.
And then it get installed and touch up after they install.
Okay. And do you have what sort of hardware is going on the doors?
Hardware's,
So yeah, the hardware, which one we pick is the hardware from the Baldwin collection. And there's the, looks like a replica of the old hardware from the previous age, like, which will be, brass finish. They call
brass.
it live brass finish.
Live brass.
Okay. Jacqueline, have you seen samples of the proposed hardware? Sounds like it's on track, but just to confirm.
I haven't, the applicant just shared that it was going to be brass hardware.
Okay.
That would be replicated, or it's proposed to replicate the original historic configuration, which we found was approvable.
Okay. This, to me, seems like a nice improvement to the neighborhood over the aluminum doors that exist.
Great.
You probably have a kick plate at the bottom, a brass kick plate as well, the bottom there.
Yes.
Correct. Especially for the first door that, I don't care about the inside door, but the first one is, mostly very,
busy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I follow you. That's very nice. Very nice. Nice improvement.
Nancy, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
No, I think that it will be a huge improvement. I was just walking up, Blackstone, Blackwood, sorry, in the last couple of days, and I have to tell you, it stands out like a sore thumb with the existing doors, so I think it'll be a huge improvement, very consistent with the neighborhood, and so I think it's really very smart. I would certainly support it 100%.
As well.
Excellent.
Same here.
Great.
I would motion to approve as presented.
I will second.
And then before we vote, we're going to open it up for public comment. So Jim, if you could just read the script.
Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at stbotolphacdc@boston.gov.
Okay. I don't see any raised hands, and we did not receive any written public comment. Let me just check one more time. Nope. So commissioners, if you would like to, or Jim, if you would like to ask for the vote, then we can move on.
Commissioners, can we vote in favor of this? Is everybody, am I doing this correct, Jack? Becky?
Yeah. So
Okay,
you just say, yep. So
Aye.
There we go. Thank you, Doug.
Nancy?
All in favor, yes, indeed.
I'm in favor. All three of us are in favor.
Great.
Excellent.
All right, Marek. So I'll be in touch with you with the next steps, but this application has been approved as submitted, and I'll follow up in detail.
Absolutely. Very much. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you very much,
Marek.
commissioners.
Thanks, Marek.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
guys.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have 119 St.Botolph Street. And this is to layer the existing front steps and entry with granite, repair step pitch, and repaint the lower stoop. Before I unmute the applicant that I've been in contact with, just want to read our staff comment. So staff has asked the applicant to reconsider installing granite treads and instead repair the front steps in kind to maintain a brownstone color. While there are existing steps around the district that include granite or brick treads, a number of these have not been approved by the commission or have been existing before the commission was created. Staff has discussed the possibility of retaining the existing concrete steps and installing a brick landing, which would be consistent with the design guidelines for the district. As a result, staff recommends denial without prejudice. And then I will unmute you, and then you should be unmuted, Anupam.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Anupam Manglik. I am a condo owner for unit number 119 St.Botolph. And we have a couple of other condo owners as well. Dave Abelman, unit number 2, and Tara Trader, unit number 4. So as you know, the scope of the work is to really change layer the tread, the granite tread on top of the steps. And the reason is that basically today, the landing, the bottom landing, and the steps have about 5% pitch. And last winter, what happened is like a lot of people actually slipped through it just because of the layer of ice and because of the pitch. So we had a discussion earlier that should we just paint it and then basically have actually the same thing as bottom, have a brick landing at the bottom. But then the question is, because these are actually not concrete steps, these are actually sandstone blocks with paint on top. I don't know when the paint was done, but in neighborhood, like a lot of steps already have sandstone, but they don't have paint. But in this case, the paint was done. The only way to really change the pitch in this case would be to really have like a layer on top, because if you put concrete on sandstone, it's not gonna blend in properly. So it won't be durable, and also it won't sort of, it's a different material, right? So it won't sort of blend in properly. So we decided to basically do, if you look at the treads, so the treads will be granite. It's a salt and pepper granite, and the landing will be granite, and basically the stoop will be actually the same color. So we'll paint the stoop. Just the difference will be only in the front steps, which will be granite treads, but otherwise everything else will be the same. Like this, the side, you see it'll be all the same color, and also the side on the steps, the two sides will be the same color as well. I mean, as Jacqueline said, there's various, condos here, like around buildings have like 133 actually have granite treads. Durham 2 and 4 have granite treads. So there's many granite treads, and also like I think every building is different. Like some buildings have painted, some buildings don't have painted. So I don't believe that basically not painting it and using granite stone, which is a natural stone, which will enhance the beauty of this, will actually change the characteristics of the neighborhood, right? Kara, I don't know if you have anything to add, or if Dave, if you'd like to add anything, please feel free to add.
I'm good.
Okay. Tara, do you have anything else?
Yes. No, I don't. But it is a hazard and has been for us.
We've all slept.
And then is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So commissioners, feel free to, provide comment or ask questions.
So I take you don't have any photographs of what you're, proposing. Am I correct? I mean, I have a visual idea in my head, but you don't have any photographs of
We have
that,
a
do you?
similar one, like basically the 133 have done. It may not be exactly the same, but like it's going to be similar to that. I mean, I can share if you don't have.
I'm in the midst of pulling it up.
Okay. And honestly, that one doesn't look as good, because I think it was just beginning of winter and was not, it doesn't look like clean enough. Yeah.
I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, we understand your concern about the pitch and the concern on safety. That goes without saying. However, I don't agree that the granite is within keeping of the historical nature of our neighborhood at all. The granite, like treads, if you will, I see it as like a tread on top of the stairs. And I don't think like your current stairs are much more in keeping with the brownstones in the neighborhood. And I would highly suggest you may have to rebuild parts of those. I understand that, but that would be a far more historically accurate way to do it. Maybe chip away a lot of it and redo them than a granite stair on top. Oh,
And
goodness.
right here is what the applicant has shared with me. With the sort of conceptual design. Of course, as the applicant has shared, there are some variations, but this is a sort of conceptual design as to what they were wishing to have.
I don't personally think it fits with all.
I agree with you, Jim. I don't think that fits with Boston
Not even a little.
architectural in general. In my experience, we've had applicants in the past have had to rebuild, repitch the stones that exist there, and then paint, use the appropriate mortar and cement to kind of fill the gaps, and then repaint them so it looks like a continuous step instead of multiple different pieces of stone. A trick that's been used, and I believe is historically accurate and at least okay with me on the commission, is to mix sand in with the paint. That provides the texture and tread that I think you might be looking for to avoid slipping. There's 100 examples of exactly what I'm speaking of on the street, and there's barely a handful of examples of granite. So I would lean towards maintaining the current look of the steps, understanding that they have to be re-leveled, rebuilt, mortared, and painted.
And Doug, I agree that a lot of buildings have it, but if you look at them, mostly they're chipping and really look ugly because most of them are like chipping. Most of the paint, our paint was done in 2023, and 2 years, basically it has chipped, and basically the
Yes.
it is, so it's a lot of,
will.
expense, right, to keep up with it. It costs about $10,000, to get these fixed. So if we have to fix every 2 years and spend $10,000, and like most of the neighborhood have like basically chipped, it doesn't look, I think, in alignment with the historic nature of the district, because most of the steps are like, chipping and peeling and, but it doesn't look good to me, like honestly, from historic perspective. But I respect your decision.
I agree
I can
that
speak to a little bit what you're saying. I'm sorry, Doug, for interrupting, because my stairs the same way, but it doesn't end up, we just repaint them ourselves every 2 years or so, because with the salt in the winter, it does chip away the paint, and it takes us 25 minutes and a quarter paint. So it doesn't cost us $10,000. Your expense would be to rebuild them, without a doubt. Sorry, Nancy, please.
I have a question, we were gonna see a picture of the tread that you
We
were
do.
talking about at the bottom. Do you have that for us to see what it looks like? I mean, painted the same color, because I agree with Jim that it should be repainted, and mortar needs to be repointed from time to time too, just part of the city.
Yeah, and I agree that the granite is probably less maintenance, but we're here to discuss the historic appearance versus the maintenance schedule associated with them. And
Agreed.
I think that over the years we've had a lot of similar applicants come to us. Some people have had masons that do a job that lasts more than just 2 years. Some people, it does deteriorate quickly, but it's frankly, it's the amount of salt that gets used in the winter that's going to be the determinant of maintenance in the future. And I think if the stairs are done properly from the get-go, paint every so often is really the only maintenance you'll need on a reoccurring basis.
100% agreed. Agreed.
And then Nancy, I think you were speaking about the landing, if I'm not mistaken. So this is
Where the tread would be and painted, of course.
Oh yeah, I don't think that was submitted within this conceptual design.
You
No.
can't really paint the granite, right?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had a photo of it, because that seemed to be missing.
I do not.
And were they proposing bricking the landing or just
It was
repainting that as well?
It was a
Looks
sort
like
of
granite.
suggestion I made, like we as staff made to the applicant, to maybe, obviously seeing, and I'm gonna bring back the existing conditions.
That
really
doesn't look
quick.
like St.Botolph.
So seeing obviously what would probably most likely have had been here was like some sort of coal chute. Seeing that though no longer exists, it's not bluestone either. We would be more willing to make an application where there would be a brick landing and then you would retain the steps up here, but that's not in the scope of work. The applicant sort of decided to just come in full with the proposal that you're seeing now.
Gotcha. So what's our next step?
If there are no
Any other
more questions or comments to be made, we can make a motion. And then once that motion is made, we'll read public comment and then we'll vote on that motion, assuming that nothing changes.
So we make a motion to vote. Is that correct?
I would motion to deny with prejudice. Without prejudice, I'm sorry.
Without prejudice, okay.
Without prejudice.
That. There you go.
Yeah, I think, just to clarify, we don't have any objection to it being repainted. It's just the additional work that's being requested, I think, Doug, that we're rejecting, correct?
I'm denying the granite treads.
Okay.
So if they would like to repaint it and, do a little bit more of a in-kind repair work, that would just be a separate application. Okay,
Great.
and then we do need a second before we move
I
on
would
to
second that. Second Doug's motion.
And if you could read that.
Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at stbotolphacdc@boston.gov.
Okay, I do not see any raised hands at the moment. Just gonna refresh my inbox one more time. Don't see anything there. So
Great.
we would just ask for a vote now.
All in
There is-
favor of denying without prejudice?
In
Aye.
favor, agreed, aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. And then Tara, I see that you're still here. So
Yep.
I'll be in contact with you all about the next steps and what that looks like. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your consideration.
Of course.
You're
Have a good
welcome.
one.
Thank you.
Great. So that sums up design
That was easy.
review. So we only have one item that's on admin. And this is 138 St.Botolph Street. So it's just to replace some non-original windows with 1/1 windows, which is what's existing right now. It is a aluminum clad material, which has been approved by the commission before in the existing color. So these are just the existing images that we see here of the building and where they want to replace their windows. Everything was in line with the guidelines. So
Looks good to me.
great. And then we just need a motion and a second, and then we'll vote.
I will motion to approve the administrative approval of that application.
And I will second Doug's motion. And then
Great.
let's vote. Everybody
in
in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nancy?
Okay, yeah,
Nice. Okay.
There you go.
yep.
Great. So that's that. Thank you all. So staff updates, we don't have one right now. We're still looking for, or still in the process of another commissioner nomination. I know that obviously we certainly want to be reaching quorum every single time we have a hearing, and I know that that's been a voiced, not concern, but a voiced comment that individuals have been making about the commission. So we're currently working on it right now, and we'll let you know once we reach a nomination and sort of what those next steps look like for the commission. But in the meantime, I do not have any other staff comments, or I'm sorry, staff updates.
It
Lee, I
looks
do
like
see you
Lee's
have
got a
your hand
question.
raised,
Yep.
so I'll let you speak. And then you should be unmuted now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So any help you need from the neighborhood in terms of contacting the mayor's office or whomever in order to expedite the review and approval of the two nominees we have for the open commission slot, we are more than willing to help. So Jackie, I assume you'll contact me or us in terms of how we can help move that along.
Sure thing. Yeah. Thank you, Lee.
So
Do we
you have
have-
two candidates, it sounds like, right? You've got two, it sounds like.
We have two very, very qualified
Great,
candidates.
super.
So it might actually be a challenge picking between the two because they're both very qualified. So we are blessed to have folks who have both the knowledge and the history in the neighborhood who want to join the commission. So anything we can do to help move that along and expedite it, we're here to help.
Noted. Thank you, Lee. And thanks for coming.
Jacqueline, do we have any agenda items for next meeting? I am going to be out of the country on the 17th.
Not right now. We haven't had any submissions, but noted for when or if we do, how we can manage that. So again, any of the commissioners, if you have any dates upcoming with that goes in line with when we usually have our hearing, just let us know. So, but noted. So probably if we do get something, we'll speak with the applicant on how we can get that process sorted. But when it comes to next month's hearing, we'll be in touch soon with what that status is.
Perfect.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Jackie.
Great. And so I just need a vote for adjournment, and then that's that. Thank
I would
you,
motion to
commissioners, and
ad-
thanks everyone.
We need to motion to adjourn the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second,
I will motion to adjourn the meeting. Second, anybody?
I'll second that motion.
There you go.
We just need a vote.
Reed?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great.
Great. Easy.